Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something wild, a decrypted survival manual transmitted literally from the year 3050. Based on the recovered texts of Dr. Michael Baumar, this is a direct message from a future chief engineer. And look, this isn't just a sci-fi history lesson, it's an actual practical survival guide for us right now trying to navigate our collapsing digital reality. Let's just jump right in.
Right out of the gate, this chief engineer drops a massive paradigm shift on us. They warn that our greatest existential threat? It's not AI, it's not politics, and it's not the economy. It's us. Specifically, our fatal human tendency to rush to absolute certainty before we even have the evidence. If we can fix this one flaw, literally every other problem gets easier to handle. But if we ignore it, man, everything just gets exponentially harder. So here is our roadmap for surviving the modern information landscape. We'll look at the transmission from 3050, then check out the Great Verification Crisis, go over the crucial survival skill of evaluating claims, learn to detect incentives and blind spots, and finally wrap up with the big one, the 3050 verification rule. All right, Section 1, Transmission from year 3050, Humanity's Greatest Flaw. Let's dig into this message, which actually claims that history's worst disasters were caused by terrible, unchallenged assumptions, rather than a lack of intelligence.
The very first lesson from the future is super interesting. It tells us that civilization didn't survive by building flawless institutions or electing perfect leaders. No, they survived by simply learning to recognize when they were wrong. The biggest collapses in history, the economic crashes everyone somehow missed, or those glaring environmental warnings we just ignored, they happened because populations got stuck in what's called narrative lock. Basically, getting emotionally attached to a conclusion before even looking at the data. So survival literally demands that we value hard evidence over our own egos, which, let's be real, has not historically been humanity's strongest suit.
Moving on to Section 2, the Great Verification Crisis, 2028 through 2035. We are stepping into a genuinely terrifying window where tech just outpaces our ability to figure out what's real. Just think about the timeline of how society loses its trust in basic sight and sound. So 2028, the death of the eyewitness. Photographic proof is basically useless. Then 2030 hits with synthetic reality and manufactured testimony. Think about the deepfakes and cloned voices we're already dealing with today, just scaled up massively. And then by 2035, we hit the automation of assumptions. The real crisis here isn't a lack of information, right? It's that we literally can't trust the information we have. We're just drowning in conflicting data. We really love to imagine AI as this perfect, unbiased, hyper-rational teacher. But the view from 3050, it shatters that illusion. It shows AI is actually an incredibly dangerous mirror. It just inherits our own flawed human biases, automates them, and blasts them out at an unprecedented scale. Raw intelligence without wisdom is a huge risk. That's exactly why disciplined human oversight, things like moral judgment, ethics, and assigning actual meaning, those are the skills machines can absolutely never replace.
Okay, Section 3, Survival Skill, Evaluating Claims. To actually make it through this crisis where seeing is no longer believing, we need to roll up our sleeves for a bit of a workshop on how to evaluate claims independently. Let's test how you handle assumptions right now using the 4 questions method. The future refers to this as the discipline of doubt. Next time you see a breaking news alert or some viral outrage post, I want you to stop and ask yourself, 1. What do I actually know for a fact? 2. What do I merely think I know? 3. What hidden assumptions am I making here? And 4, and this is the absolute kicker, what specific evidence would prove my view entirely wrong? If you can't answer that last one, you're not actually looking for the truth. You're just defending a belief. Let's look at the third discovery from 3050, which perfectly illustrates this. It says facts are strictly observed, but conclusions, those are entirely constructed in your head. It's a trap we fall into constantly. Like, say you see a photo of 2 rival politicians shaking hands. The undeniable fact is just that the photograph exists. That's it. But the assumption, the narrative you build in your mind, might be that they're secretly conspiring. Learning to separate what you literally see from the story you tell yourself about it, that is an absolutely crucial daily survival skill. Now, to avoid getting totally played by public relations, the future gives us a golden rule. Strictly monitor actions, not words. Words are cheap, they're focus grouped, highly polished, and explicitly designed to manipulate us. But real-world actions, those leave muddy footprints. Time and time again, history proves that what a corporation or a government actually does in the real world tells you way more about their true priorities than whatever slick media statement they just released.
This brings us to a tough one. Instead of just looking for stuff that confirms what you already think, you have to actively seek out adversarial evidence. That means deliberately hunting for data that completely contradicts your own viewpoint. Sure, find the supporting evidence, that's fine, but then go out of your way to find the opposing evidence and try to find neutral observers too. Then compare all three of those pathways. Remember, your goal here isn't to win an argument on social media or crush someone in a debate. Your goal is to drastically reduce your own personal error rate so you aren't living your life based on an illusion.
Section 4. Detecting incentives and blind spots. Let's see how all of this helps us spot the hidden traps laid out by the media, governments, and the corporate institutions we rely on. The first discovery in the manual points out that absolutely every source, mainstream, alternative, whatever, has blind spots. A huge mistake we make is asking, can I trust this source 100%? Honestly, that's just the wrong question. Instead, we should be asking, what is this source likely missing? Because whether it's accidental or totally intentional, leaving things out is a way more effective method of misleading people than just making stuff up out of thin air. Always look for the missing context. So when you're consuming the daily news, you really have to audit the incentives behind it. You need to figure out why a specific narrative is being pushed so aggressively to the public. Like, if 10 different outlets are running the exact same story, it might not be 10 independent verifications. It could literally just be one financially or politically incentivized source being parroted 10 times. Remember, the truth completely welcomes scrutiny, but propaganda relies entirely on you not looking too closely at those hidden motivations. Who benefits if I believe this? Seriously, ask yourself this constantly. It's probably one of the most powerful mental tools you can have. You don't ask it just to instantly debunk a claim, but because tracking those incentives reveals the true motives of whoever is giving you the info. If you just blindly accept a narrative without wondering who's cashing in on your belief, whether they're gaining money, power, or social influence, you are practically begging to be manipulated. All right, Section 5, the 30-50 verification rule. We've hit the final and honestly the most critical phase of this survival manual, fundamentally rewiring how your brain categorizes information. This is the 6th discovery, and it totally shatters our normal habits. We're so hardwired for a simple binary, right? Everything has to be instantly slapped with a true or false label. But think about this breakdown. By expanding your mental categories to include unknown and insufficient evidence, you drastically drop your error rate in a world just overflowing with conflicting data. Think about how many modern disasters happen just because people feel this intense, overwhelming pressure to declare absolute certainty way before the facts are actually in. Try this little exercise the next time you're in a heated argument. When you feel that intense emotional spike, literally force yourself to say, I don't know. Admitting ignorance, acknowledging that you just don't have enough evidence yet, keeps you out of those logical traps that trigger massive, misguided emotional reactions. Society has totally conditioned us to think saying I don't know is a sign of weakness, but the chief engineer, they say it's actually your ultimate armor. It gives you the breathing room to just observe without reacting and to live productively with uncertainty while you wait for the real data to show up. You're going to want to use this final verification checklist every single day. First, demand transparency. Open data is a totally essential civilizational technology. Second, always remind yourself that institutional outrage, virality, or huge popularity, that's all just an illusion of certainty. Emotional intensity is literally never verifiable evidence. And finally, wait for reality's footprints. A false narrative might hold up for a little while, but eventually reality forces a physical contradiction. Documents leak, data patterns show up, and the truth always leaves a physical trace. So here it is, the ultimate takeaway for the digital age, the core 350 rule. Increase your confidence slowly, make the evidence actually earn your trust. But, and this is huge, be completely willing to drop your confidence instantly the second the evidence changes. At the end of the day, truth is just whatever is still standing after you've mercilessly attacked every single one of your own assumptions. Don't put your faith in a flawed institution. Put your faith in a rigorous, disciplined process for testing claims. As we sign off on this transmission from 3050, the message is crystal clear. Reality does not require our agreement. It only requires our encounter with it. The universe couldn't care less about our assumptions. So ask yourself, are you ready to choose the hard work of continuous correction over the cozy comfort of being certain? Will you test your own beliefs today, or are you just going to wait for reality to ruthlessly test them for you tomorrow? The choice is entirely up to you. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and stay curious.